Imagine waiting 2 weeks to know if you got a like or not, or a thumbs up. In the decades before the internet, people made comics, and we reached out to each other. What was it like? This is the Sequential Artists Workshop, and these are the 90s mini comics oral history archives. Come join us as we take a longer look at those analog days when communication was a lot slower, maybe more deliberate, maybe more reckless. Who knows? It was just different. Join us as we take a look and really notice how much things have changed. Come join us on the socials. Sometimes it's Comics Workshop, sometimes it's Saw Comics. Either way, come check us out and welcome. Hi, this is Tom Hart. Some quick context. This was recorded on Carol's farm in the summer of 2023. There are a lot of cuts. We had 2 phones and an iPad, and we were more interested in the fire and eating dinner than getting the technology right. So it's a bit scrambled as far as consistency, but it's still a wonderful talk with one of our medium's best artists. So hope you enjoy it. Thanks.
All right, so let me see. Let me just show the scene. We got the fire going. We got the moonlit night somewhere up there. There. We got Carol on the ukulele. In focus. Okay.
My name, Carol Tyler.
Yeah.
Tyler.
What's the date?
Carol Tyler. It's, oh God, it's like June 2nd, maybe? 2 in 2023. We are in a GPS something or other, Augusta, Kentucky. The Ohio River is there. That's north, that's east, west, and south. And this location where the fire pit is right now, we always had the fires up there till we one day thought this would be a good place for a directional symbol. So Justin and I were working on a directional symbol for a while there. It was going to go there. We're going to build the whole garden around it and have the burn and everything. But here we are. This is perfect. The reason why it's depressed is because there was an old water line and the farmer's tractor got stuck there. And so trying to get out of here, and it made this wonderful depression and flattened it out, and there's fruit trees right there. It's just great. Great.
So what kind of, how would you describe your work in the 80s and 90s, and where were you being published and where were you working from?
So in the 80s and 90s, I was in that phase of transitioning away from painting, because I had done fine art painting, big pictures. And I came into doing comics during the era, doing art during the era of large abstract expressionist canvases. And I always had stories to tell, and I wanted to add content. It was like, oh, it has to be abstract, and it has to be post-painterly abstraction, and there were all these rules in the art colleges. And so I just thought, well, I want to start adding words and recognizable imagery, because I could always draw things. And that was frowned upon. So I went ahead and started putting words in the pictures, and then I started working on sequence, like, well, a story you go from, like I talked about how this was a directional place and how it happened. So every story, every time I tell a story, I just naturally do that. It has a beginning, has a reason, and goes somewhere. So with a single panel painting, you really can't do that, or that's not the nature of that work. It wasn't at that time. So I started doing pictures, adding words and images. And then I thought, well, I can't schlep these giant things around, so it became broken down more into actual storytelling comics. So that was the 80s, and I first got published I saw Justin Green's work. I was very influenced by the fact that he was confessional and so close to home, what I understood, Catholicism, and Chicago, which is where I was from. So when I saw that, I thought, well, that's kind of what I'm aiming for, so I'll do that. Started working on a few things and showed some stuff to Aileen Crum at a party. There was a party at Robert Crum's, at Ron Turner's. That's what I did. Showed her some stuff. She said, yeah, submit it to Weirdo, and that's how I got started. I didn't really do zines or any kind of like minis or anything like that. It wasn't, it just kind of happened that I happened into Weirdo magazine, with Crumbs. And then in the 90s, I just kind of kept up with Weirdo and Fantagraphics, and I had a kid to raise. Me and Justin, children make it hard to do comics. And I thought of like stuff to do with copy machines. Like when I was in New York before I met Justin, I would make copies of my hair and put them on lampposts and stuff just for the hell of it. So I was doing things with multiples and working things out that way. I just kind of stayed with traditional publishing methods. Try to increase my skill. At first it was learning comics in black and white, which meant forfeiting the color palette. And then drum scanners became something you could do color on. Like before, black and white, copy machine, black and white, printing, for cost, black and white. Any color you did in comics back in the day had to do with color separations and cutting all the stuff on film, and I didn't want to do any of that. So I was glad when the flatbed scanners and drum scanners came, because you could use color techniques, watercolors, color pencils, and stuff like that. It kind of arched me back towards what I liked in painting, because I'm very good at color. But I always could tell a good story, and so I kept telling the stories. Kept on with the stories. I was always telling stories. Roommates may be like, you're cracking me up, Tyler. I was always telling I was good for a good story. Oops. And then, I just kept working on stuff and trying to get published, and was fortunate to make friends with Kim Thompson at Fantagraphics, and he said, yeah, anything you give me, I'll publish it. And same with Gary Groff later. So pretty much I don't have to worry about finding a publisher. But when we're talking about print material, anything online like that, I've posted stuff online. It's a whole different ball game. It's a whole different interface with the material, a whole different way. I've been adding color to some black and white drawings. So easy to do. It's so easy to just lay in a layer of bucket fill paint or some scan thing. It's like you can get away with murder. Because comics used to be, and still are, very labor intensive, but the way I do it, I don't like to do that. I feel like I'm cheating. I feel like I have to do it all as a piece of art and not just like process of like black line and then throw some color behind it. I don't feel like people are getting their money's worth, or that I'm being legit if I do that.
Where were you located in those times?
Started out in California and San Francisco, but I'm not an underground cartoonist. I didn't get out there till 82. And then I moved out there in 84, and so I did a lot of the work out there till about, moved to Ohio. It was in Sacramento. We moved to Sacramento when our kid was little for school and stuff. Went to Ohio in 97, and by then you could scan stuff and put it on, send it by Dropbox, or put it on a thumb drive and send it on. And now, like my current book that I'm working on now, I've got a big flatbed scanner, and I scan the art and put it on, make a TIFF file, and then I have a very slow speed computer, so I send it via like one of those things, external hard drive. I just FedEx it to them. And then we talk over the phone like, oh, page 63 needs to be corrected, or it needs to be bumped up with, it's too gray, or something like that.
All right, the next section is comics production, but we're losing the light, so I want to move the
Let's
tab.
put another thing on. Or, you know what?
Let's do that.
If we put more on there, we're going to be here all night watching this fire.
Yeah.
So let's just let this go down.
All right, can you get closer?
I'll get closer.
And I'll move this closer, too.
The trees still ashes.
Yeah.
And look how the trees are brightening. I've been watching the trees brighten up because of the brightness of the moon. Is this better, Tom?
Well, we'll see. Really losing the light.
And here we lost the light, so we moved inside for the remaining part of the interview. Part 2, sort of. Carol Tyler, part 2. So when we were talking about comics production, we were talking about how you readied your comics for print. What I want to hear a little about is you weren't printing your own work. You were sending it to Weirdo and other magazines. How did you know? I assume you were sending these things in the mail.
Yes.
How did you know that what you were sending them was what it was going to look like when you were...
You would try with the whiteout to get it as clean and all that as possible, thinking probably the gutters would be cleaned up by then, the margins.
Somebody there would clean up.
Yeah. I tried things with bleeds. I really didn't know how to convey what I wanted, so a lot of my stuff was printed really awkward. Like I'd have a bleed out of a panel off the page, and they'd print it so that the bleed was actually then had a margin around it.
Right.
I couldn't seem to get what I needed.
Did it matter when you had could you have a relationship with certain editors or certain production people where you could actually talk about that stuff? Or were you still
why
trying
did you do this? It's terrible. Oh my God. I think everybody was struggling. This is a very low level trade.
Everybody was struggling to figure it out.
Well, we had interns working and unpaid people, and we weren't getting paid nothing.
And who was publishing Weirdo at the time?
Last Gas.
Last Gas. And that's
They knew what they were doing.
And that's Ron Turner's company.
Yeah. Didn't have any trouble with them.
And who?
With my Weirdo stuff, it was usually Fantagraphics. The work always came out kind of whacked.
Who would
And then I'd see it in print and go, "Oh my God, I hate it." Because I was working it from a sculptural painting, and had to learn. Oh wait, graphics has its own rules. So I'd be like doing something that I would normally do, like building a shape, making that like something I would do in painting, and then I'd see it in print and I'd go, yeah, that's awful. Different language.
By saying building a shape, you mean a little bit of three-dimensionality to it?
Both of the above. A little bit of three-dimensionality I liked, but you couldn't do that. Any whiteout was going to be looking terrible.
About paste ups and
yeah,
you did that kind
patches,
of thing.
I tried to make them exact, like you couldn't see the patch because it would go through a black line. Doing everything I could. I got real good at patches, so if I made a big mistake, I didn't like it, I'd put a piece of paper under my paper and then take an X-Acto knife and cut through both papers so that the one could slip right in where the other one was. But I think somebody was doing it because it wasn't, a lot of us had hack things going on. You'd have your image and you'd have something stuck on top, or I was making these seamless patches that weren't seamless. It was all a mess. And
you learned these tricks from the cartoonists around you. That sort of leads us into some of the next questions. It says, tell us when you first saw evidence of people making their own comics. And tell us...
Justin.
Justin Green's Mickey Brown. When did you see that and where?
80. Let's see. 81 maybe? Look, it looks like I have a tattoo, but it's that ink.
Yeah.
From the paper. G2 strikes again. For posterity, G2 is a cheap ballpoint gel pen. And I happen to have my sweaty arm lay across, and it looks like I have a tattoo on my flesh. Okay, but I don't have tattoos. So you asked me about what?
Where did you see Binky Brown or whatever comics that you first saw them?
Well, in the 80s, sometime. Friends. And I liked, like once that became kind of in the awareness. Because I was not a person who liked comic books at all. Terrible, huh? I was not a cartoonist.
But you had artist friends who had some of these comics stashed.
Mm-hmm. Arcade, Raw, and all that started to all of a sudden appear in my life. When I never saw that stuff in Tennessee, but when I got into graduate school in Syracuse, things started to pop up.
1981, 82.
Yeah. You know, it's like, oh. And then I made friends with the townies who were doing comics for the local newspaper. So my friends in graduate school were a few painters, like my friend Judy. But I also had friends with kind of people who lived in Syracuse all the time. I had a small group there, and he was a cartoonist, Tom Pryor. Great guy. Tom Pryor does Ahoy Comics now. He's editor of Ahoy Comics. He made me laugh.
So, did you ever read any of the magazines that were floating?
That thing stopped.
That's okay. It's on, but it's just the light goes off.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Did you ever read any of the magazines that reviewed comics, Fact Sheet 5 or anything like that?
No.
Did you know those? No.
No, I didn't care about that. I cared about the scene.
You cared about the scene.
Making the scene.
And that's when you were in San Francisco. You were part of the scene.
Well, art. I can't even describe the art world. The art world was exploding in the early 80s with graffiti and people doing like music was influencing art. Comics were jumping in there and everything was like fluid and crazy and wonderful. And so mark making was just for everyone. Comics were suddenly like a hot thing. You know what Raw was doing and Arcade and all that? It was all hot. I mean, not to the art world. When I went to graduate school, I had to like, okay, go back and... Oh, okay. Well, actually, I did my thesis on comics. I did. Terrible paper, but art is called Paint in the Pulse of Experience or some shit like that. I honestly don't think they expect kids who are in painting graduate school program to come up with great writing. And I remember being tormented because I had to do a thesis paper about what? I was like this. I had my friend Henry helping me. He kept saying, just get to the main idea. What's your main idea? And I was so dazzled by comics, and I met Justin. I just wanted to get out of there and move to New York City, but I had to sit there and do this paper. But I did it on comics. Something. I read it like about 10 years ago, and it's like, oh my God, it's horrible. But at least I did it on... I did it on the topic being, your experience is what your work should be about. There's no other way. You go to your experience, and you bring that forward. There was a rawness and a realness with that approach. So, yeah.
Did you do any comics in grad school? Actual?
No, I was making my paintings sequential. Excuse me, so to sit down and do a page or something, no, I wasn't doing that. I was still, you gotta remember, if you had said to me, draw a trash can, I could do that, but I felt terrible about it. Because we were taught that that was not allowed. It was not legitimate in painting.
Wasn't conceptual, wasn't abstract.
No. write. And so the illicit quality of that, I just felt like, oh man, I kind of believed it. You know, I bought into that idea that I can't be a painter. Well, I can, I can try to push it. And I was, I had a gallery in New York who was trying to get me to come up with a series of paintings, and they described what I did as new image painting.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Because that was the hot thing, new image. I was doing new image paintings, and that meant that there was something recognizable in the painting. Right? So then I was being specific, but I'd stand there and say, well, like, why is there a man laughing at a pair of pants, a pair of shorts? Why did you do that? And I'd think, I don't know. I just think it's funny to see on a canvas surface. You know, when I met Justin, I just started doing a bunch of Justin art. He was laughing. I have a couple of experiences. What happened was, like, I told you that I had that, I will occasionally go through a phase where I see things and I make them into, they kind of lead me. And the whole time I was in undergraduate school in Tennessee, I was drawing this man, the side of his face, and the eyebrows. And then when I met Justin, it's like, oh God, he's the man. So I would draw his eyebrows and started to draw his head. I was doing heads, a lot of heads and stuff. And then, so just always just kind of like radar up for images, radar up for imagery, what's going on. And everything I imagined had story attached. And yet I was afraid to go ahead and fully commit to throwing those words out there.
So when
I'd stand in front of the canvas and tell a story, and I thought, I can't go on like that. Once you tell the story, Tyler, just tell it on. And then it was like, can't make it. I guess I'll have to make it.
It's an important thing we tell our students is like they have to be able to read your page without you standing there telling them what's happening on the page.
What I really tried to do here was this and such. Yeah, you have to speak for yourself.
So at some point you started making comics, and at some point you met Aileen Kominsky.
Mm-hmm.
Did she say make comics, or were you already making them at this point?
I was at a party at Ron Turner's house. Justin didn't go because he's not a social animal. And I was introduced somehow, I don't know, it was like, Aileen said, submit to Weirdo, and let me see your work, and I submit to Weirdo. So I drew something for her. I think I had it, I don't remember. When I got with Justin, I can't remember. I know that I was doing drawings that were very literal. And the actual adding of the words, you know, the actual go ahead and tell the story. So I went, it was first imagery, and then the actual put the words in there came after I committed to like, okay, I'm going to put pictures on my surfaces. And then it was like, oh, what are you trying to say? And then it was like, well, if she's going to, you know, I said, oh, I'm with Justin. I'm out here in San Francisco, Justin's girlfriend. And she was like, yeah, submit to Weirdo. And I don't know if I had pages ready. I think I did, because I think I showed up like a dunce with my portfolio.
Nice.
I think. I don't remember. I honestly don't remember what happened. But she published something of mine, and I was mortified, because again, I was using art marks.
Art marks.
You know, I wasn't using the right material. I just hated the way it looked. And I knew I could do better, so.
Aileen was editing Weirdo at the time.
She just taking over control from Robert, or from Peter Bagg. Mm-hmm. They kind of burned out. Like Robert burned out first, and Peter did his run, and That's why Robert did a Cosmo type cover for the Weirdo that Aileen took over. Made it look more like a Cosmo,
That's right.
Cosmopolitan magazine.
Light green cover.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With Aileen Bitchin. And so, I saw it in print and I was mortified. And then I looked back at my early work and it's like, I couldn't stop making brush strokes, but I was making them with ink. It took me a long time to figure out, wait a minute, they're coming off as like loaves of bread up coming off of people. So I was trying to pretend I was building like a tone in the background the same way I would with paint. But with black and white, it's like, oh no, these are big fat marks. I hated that. It's like, okay, so you've got to work through, find your crosshatch. You got to find your mark. How are you going to do that? And I've been fighting with that my whole career, trying not to make it look like, loaves of bread coming off of people or too much noodles in the background. It really annoyed me that I was trying to... Sometimes you put a color field behind something with ink. It's just like the materials just don't always match. You use pastels, you can use ink. Ink and pastels. Pastels look wimpy. They kind of... It's just techniques and technical stuff that has to be worked through.
So
Colored pencils are waxy. You can get really ink over them. I was just kept trying to get my marks and my materials to align.
Did you have any assistance from your peers or editors in how to achieve what you were trying to do?
No, that's not the way it worked back then. You did your work because the underground press and the alternative press was not in the business of telling people what to do. So you could do complete half work or try to get better on your own. So it was up to you to say, ooh, I don't like the way that turned out, or I don't like what this was. I did a story about my daughter being freaked out by sunflowers, but it wasn't sunflowers at all. It was that she was being abused at daycare. And I really tried, I used colored pencil to blend the pencil and the ink. I wanted to do these moods, and that anytime I used the color, it would be to help convey the content. And then when I did, and then Fantagraphics printed it wrong. And then there was a strip I did called Color My Day, and this was a big thing for me because I used a toned ink, and then I made boxes below in the lower part of each panel so it was like Julia wanted to go to a party, a little girl's party. And so there's, in the boxes below are the color of the party dress, the color of the gift that we bought or something, the color of pizza puke hours later, or things like that, So like the colors at the bottom, the color key on the bottom of every panel also help to tell the story of what was going on. So I always approached color as being really something you don't just wash in. It's its own entity, and you have to control it and be careful with it. And the same with, ink is not just a black line trap character. The book I'm doing now, I went back to all black and white because I wanted to study that mark and be in that mark. And it's tricky. It's hard to do because it can get away from you real easy. It can be you gotta watch out.
So, next question is, who were some of your other peers, and how did they affect your work? You touched on this a little, but maybe you could expand a little bit. Did you guys collaborate ever? Did you do jams? Did you look over each other's work ever?
No. The only time I ever had a sense of, well, there were a couple times I would take work over to Aileen's in winters because we'd have to have it by a certain day so we could take it to Ron. And there were a couple times when I got there, I had misspelled word or there was something wrong. I had to sit down at Robert's drawing table and make a correction with his tool. That was the closest I got to that. Or that specific thing only happened once that I sat down at Robert's table. Justin and I we did a few things together, but we figured out real quick that we were both kind of in our own methods, and he didn't want to work with me, I don't work with him, not because I didn't love him, but because it was just hard to do. And we lived places, so when were you going to get together? We had kids, or you go here, so there was no place, there was no way to have a call. What were you going to do? Have a bunch of people come? If you got together, it was to drink beer and get high and talk to people, but not to draw. All that drinking, drawing, none of that existed. Too much pressure.
When did festivals start, and when did you start going to them?
I don't remember. I think in the 10s.
In the 2010s?
I think there were some, I'm sure there was some, but I wasn't published. Of course, there's San Diego. And I went to San Diego, and I got an award in 88.
88?
Yeah.
So you went
So I don't know if I flew, sorry. If they paid, I think I flew. I was at my sister's, and there was a heat wave, I'll never forget that. That's why I remember 1988. It was a very bad heat wave in the whole United States. I was in northern Illinois where I grew up, and there were it was 100 degrees every single day, and that was so whoa, this is not happening. And I was at my sister's, and we went to the Walgreens where we used to go when we were kids, and the man in there said, it was terribly doomed. He would say, I guess we'll have to now all have air conditioners. And we were thinking how we were going to survive. And my sister was driving the car. She was clenching the steering wheel saying, we'll have to adapt to survive. Because it was they had been talking about global warming. And then it just was out of control. I guess Seattle is happening now. No, they had never had temperature like that. A full month of over 100. Wow. So I flew to San Diego, and it was cool and lovely, and I thought, what? People back in Illinois where I grew up, because I lived in California, but I was visiting my sister. People back where I grew up are feeling like the world is ending, because the weather is so horrible. Nobody had air conditioning. You didn't need it.
So, what was it like at the San Diego convention in 1988?
No, I just know it was cool.
That's all. Were there any of your post-underground alternative friends there?
Well, yeah, there was. I was there because I was gonna. Why did I go?
You got an award, you said.
I didn't know I was gonna win the award. I was nominated for the award. It was something that Ron Turner and Trina Robbins.
So Dory Sada Award? Yeah.
And then when I won it, I just got speechless. I couldn't talk. I accepted, and I said, I just can't. Someday I'll be able to talk, but I can't today. And so I thought, wait, this woman died. I'm winning an award. She died. This doesn't make sense. Honored for being the best newcomer. They were trying to find a way. I was the one and only winner. And I was the new kid on the block, kind of. Because these women had the real trailblazers were the people who did Women's and Tits and Clits and Twisted Sisters. Those are the women. But I really didn't get into that work because I never saw myself as somebody who had to, oh, I'm a woman. I should look at women's work. You know, I sought out the best comics, the best cartoonists. Not to say that the women weren't great. There were a lot of great things going on in women's comics, but I like guys, so I was looking at guys' work.
But you were in Twisted Sisters. Was that just reprints from Weirdo? Or was that original stuff?
I don't know how that worked. How Diane and Aileen put that together. Now they like stuff. They like stuff that I did. Excuse me. They like things that were in women's comics. I think some of my women's stuff was in Twisted Sisters. I don't remember. I'm not in charge of that.
So you were in women's comics, the women's comics stuff. And women's comics, if I remember, had a different editor every issue, right?
I think so.
So who was your editor for?
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Was it maybe Phoebe or somebody like that?
No, not Phoebe. No, I honestly don't remember.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. It says
there'd be themes with the women's comics. There'd be themes. One of the themes was disastrous relationships, and that's when I did Sweet and Sleep.
Mm-hmm. And the same thing,
I was always trying to up my game, so I thought I could talk about my ex. You know, you could go to the easy, but what's a disastrous relationship? It's not my disaster. That's what I thought of that one. And then I wanted to present it by embracing the culture, which is why I made it look like a scroll going up the page, top and bottom, but it wasn't printed right, so there you go. I wasn't able to pull that off.
And who was printing that? That was what?
I was in Women's.
But I mean,
Ripoff.
Yeah, Ripoff. Okay. Also in San Francisco.
I don't know if they'd moved up to Grass Valley by that time. They might have moved up there. I know when I did the men cover, the women's cover, and it's men, and I've got all the bottles. I'm looking at the bottles. I think I remember taking that up to Grass Valley, and someone colored the background because I had just done the bottles and the figure, and they wanted it to be a solid. So someone cut in a ruby lith or something, did the color to make it yellow, which is great.
All right, so there are 3 final questions, wrap-up questions.
Okay.
What do you miss about that time? And that time, again, is before digital stuff. What do you not miss about that time? And then, just any other anecdote you remember. Those are the 3.
What do I miss?
Yeah, about those pre-digital times. And also, where's the beer opener?
I left it down there.
Oh yeah, do we have another? But you can answer the question. I'll do it.
Did I leave it down there? I have a beer. I have an opener somewhere, don't I?
I thought I grabbed it.
Oh no, I left it down there because I thought, we don't need this. Can't we go like this?
I've always been terrible at that. I'll ask these questions again so we can recognize this lengthy attempt to open a bottle of beer.
Can't you go like this? No. I'm sure if we got a pair of pliers, we can get it.
I'll put it in the fridge. I'll go get it after we finish up.
Okay.
Alright, hold on.
Because there's always get that.
Yeah, we'll do that too. I'll get the beer and then we'll watch you back.
It's on a chair up here.
Oh, okay.
And we have to check the thing anyway.
Right.
So what do I miss about the days of the old style of print? Well, there's how I feel, and then there's like technical stuff. So how I feel about it, I miss that it just was fun. And it didn't seem like there was not that much pressure involved. So I could do a page for Weirdo, or Elaine would say, can you make your 3-pager or a 5-pager? I need some extra. Sure, I'll do that. So there was a camaraderie and a funness to just kind of doing this Weirdo stuff or doing pages for here and there. I liked how people would call up and say, hey, can you do a page? I'd be like, yeah, I can do that. I liked being a cartoonist. And I also felt like it was leading to something. Like, maybe I could get a newspaper strip. Maybe I could do this. And Justin and I were both in this vitality about, he was a little bit more jaded about it because he'd been burned. You know, he really got into sign painting because there was no money in comics. But I kind of liked it. I didn't know what was coming. But I liked it. And I liked that I could tell my stories or I could talk about my life. You know, I've always been kind of self-referential. And it seemed, and it bothered me that it didn't pay. Oh, God. I really wanted to do this. But yeah, you got to pay those bills. And that really affected both Justin and I's careers. If somewhat by miracle we had things worked out, we would have had so much work on the table. You know, I wouldn't have had to go get 3 jobs here and there, driving all over with the jobs. He wouldn't have had to paint all the signs. You know, it just seemed stupid. So the content level was low because the money was bad, because we had to get jobs. Technically, and the feeling of that, you know, kind of like, oh, this is fun to do. Technically, I actually work the same way. You know, I use a ruler. I dip a pen. If I make a mistake, one thing I do that's different, which I like about being able to scan art to correct, is just that if I I forgot, or I really wish this, I don't like that word, nasty, I'm going to put something, bread, you know, just substitute a word. So what I do, if you look at my originals now, I'll draw it, and there'll be like a spot, a big period in the margin, a big circle, like ink. And that tells me that on that line, if you go in there, there's a misspelled word, or I need to insert a different word. And if I put a word under that dot, that's the correct word. But the dot lines up with, because I still, like a spaz, draw lines underneath so that I can write the text. I always have to have a baseline because I cannot stand to read when people don't understand leading and kerning. Text has got to look good. So, okay, being able to correct that and not have to get out the whiteout and do it, and, you know, mountain and you, oh Lord, you know, that's kind of funny to see that, or make a patch. So the correction process is easier, or if like, oh God, now that I look at this should be this way. This panel needs to come after that. Why didn't I think of that? Because I'm stupid. I don't do thumbnails through, no. I just start drawing. So it's like, I start the page thinking, well, I kind of want, think of the last page I did. The last page I did was part of like a 6-page saga thing. And I knew sort of how I wanted it to be. Just and that goes back to painting. I knew I wanted this up here to do this. It's all intuitive placement of movement, where the eye goes and where the word balloons are going to have to move. And I do a lot of backwards stuff, like these weather patterns here. I like people, if they want to read my comics, they're going to start on the upper left, but you may end up going right across, go into the margin, jump, go right to left, and maybe up. So I try to make it interesting, and then I try to make the page just look clean and just interesting. It's like, okay, do I have it balanced? Is it this and that? So I'm much more now adept at putting together the page I want in advance, whereas in the past I didn't really do that as much, and so there were a lot of mistakes and stuff like that. But I think with there's a real traditional. You look at job thing. It's like, it's pretty thing. But when I started doing in Late Bloomer, I started in the framing of Late Bloomer. I started doing things, and then with Soldier's Heart, you'll never know. Yes, I was really being more pliable with placement and all that. And then this one, and then Fab Four Mania was pretty clear. It was text, image, it was a diary type thing. But I really worked on the lettering skills on Fab Four. And then the one I'm doing now, it's like kind of like looking at black and white and just focusing on the story because it's a big topic and there's a lot to juggle. And I did not want to deal with color, so I got it off the table in the manner that I'd always used it. I said, just do black and white. If you feel like later you're going to add it, then you can figure that out right now, because it's such an intense topic and you know what the parts are, but you don't have the overall. You can't know the overall story sometimes when you do a story. So I just left it at black and white. And so sometimes I look at the page, it's like, oh, it's blank. It's not working. Because I like minimal art. I tend to like, or single image. Balance the balances and the negative space and stuff like that. I hate comics that do, I'm sorry, I hate comics where there's a head talking, a head's talking, and then it's like, you are getting away with murder, guy or gal. People that don't add, I want there to be clues and things going on in the background. And, some certain level of animation to the characters, and, it needs to be fun to read and fun to look at and all that. So I know people that work sequence. Their main thing is to put the sequence down. So I'll tell you what else I can't stand.
What?
And I think that's because this is today's comics. A person is sitting there. They're sitting in the park. A leaf falls. They look at the leaf. And then they go, sigh. Give me a break. I have to do that in panel A and then panel B, so it's like, I don't even want to know if that's called scene to scene or panel to panel, whatever that guy came up with. It's just like, that's, to me, it's like, oh, you did 28 pages of bullshit. I could do that. I have all these books out there. No, that's getting away with murder. So what I do is try to bring like more Sears catalog items, I guess, or just more. I just keep feeling like people need to get their money's worth. I feel ripped off looking at stuff where there's like, where's the beef? Where's your? Did you not see anything in this room? Or I'd rather have a jam-packed mess. I guess. I don't know. And I'm here saying I like minimal, but you've got to know what that means. Got to know how to work it.
Yeah, I was wondering how you were going to reconcile minimal with more Sears catalog. It doesn't sound like.
But I do.
Yeah.
Because I've figured out a way to work things. But that's because I've been doing it a long time.
Editor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I know. I also know that, like, the page I'm thinking of, I can't even describe it, but if a guy walks into a room and it's an ice cream parlor and they sit down and you establish it's an ice cream parlor based on the features of an ice cream parlor. A little stripy canopy over here, maybe some ice cream cone posters, and the milkshake machine, and the counter, and the guy behind the counter, and the camp. You know, so if you can establish that, you don't need to repeat the same thing. But what you can do is say, know when to put in the elements that will still establish it as you're in the place without being redundant, and making it an interesting composition at the same time. You know, the focus goes from the context to the action to the person.
Oh. Never heard it put that way. The context to the action to the person.
Well, I never did say that either, so I just made something up. But it's like movies. You know, when you see a movie, you know, I don't watch movies to pick their brains. But we've all seen the movies. The car drives up. There's the old house. The car's driving up. And as the action gets worse and worse, or whatever it's going, you're more in focus. You don't have to see the house in the country anymore. You're coming closer and closer to the thing. So what's going to happen?
Interesting. I think it's everything.
No, you said what I like. I'll tell you what I don't like about today.
Sure.
You wanted to know what I liked? About the old analog log days?
Yeah, it was more about that time, not about this time. More about.
Yeah, then I just didn't like that we weren't able to make money. And I still make pages the same. And I really feel foreign in today's world, though. I mean, different from what I was saying earlier. Because people don't read print as much. You know. It meant something to get something in a magazine. And now you get something in a magazine. Magazine's not even there. There's not even any, I don't know. It's just not something that, the world got smaller, that print world. So that's sad, because I really think, I really liked, you know, maybe one day I could be in the New Yorker, maybe one, I mean, you can still do that, but all of those things went away. All most of the platforms went away. And then people were wild because it was like, oh, I can do a mini. I can do it on a copy machine. Wow, when the copy machine, Kinko's, and people were going to make mini, and it was going to be that thing. That was going to be awesome. And then it was online. I remember people saying, wow, I got my work published online. I said, where's your payday? And they'd be like, well, I'll build up an audience and all this kind of stuff. It's like, so in the meantime, I can see it as a tool, but as like, I just want to be a web cartoonist and never get paid. It's kind of not there. I know people that have broken through, but there's been a lot of, the other thing I miss is that there's no gatekeepers. You know, people criticize, who will say, I prefer that this be printed, not that. Or that this person matters, this person doesn't. Somebody had to make decisions about things. But now it's like everybody's okay and everybody's out there publishing. That's fine and well and good, but like with the art world or anything in culture, you know, music, same thing. You know, there's a bazillion musics out there and stuff, but there were gatekeepers, there were arbiters, there were people who were opinionated and tried to help us, you know, help promote culture and shape culture and all that. And I think people are kind of lost. There's no sense of, you know, if I say what's a great thing and you recommend something to me, that's reflecting your taste or influence or something. But it might not be my taste, so I'm still at sea or I'm lost. But there's no doubt that in the past that this was a good place to go, or that this was a good magazine, or that you could get, if you could get in this magazine. And those editors would select the people that they thought could do the job, and it would be up to the task. Or like I remember when I got in the LA Times or LA Weekly in the 90s. That was a big thing. It was hard to get into, and I got in, and I had like, I think it was over a series of 4 weeks or something. I had a thing in there, and I was happy to get in the LA Weekly. That was a big deal. But weekly magazines are gone. I don't know. It's just having to adapt to the new world and all of that. And I'll always be rooted in the print medium. I've tried to make adaptations. But my next book, I did think, what if I published, or I said to Fantagraphics, I want it to be something you get on your phone. And we don't have to go to the carbon trouble of printing a book, and wow, it's a great doorstop someday, or why cut down trees? Why don't we just go straight to that? And I thought, because people like to have a book in their hand. So I've done my share of posting things on Facebook and online and stuff like that. It's just like crack. It's a party drug. It leads to nothing. You know?
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks. We'll say official. Thank you, Carol. Tyler, okay. Thank you, too.
I'm going to go get a flashlight.
Thanks for listening. This is the 80s, 90s pre-internet mini comics oral history archives. This is a project of the Sequential Artists Workshop, or SAW. You can find out more about this project or about the courses we offer, the programs we offer in comics and visual literacy and graphic novels at sawcomics.org. That's SAWCOMICS.org. You can find out how to support this project through the donate button. You can also support us on Patreon at SAW Comics. You can find more of this on our YouTube channel or through various places where you get your podcasts. You can find archives of this at the University of Florida and at our other partner institutions. And waving at you from the past, this is Tom Hart, the director of the Sequential Artists Workshop. Thanks so much for listening.